For more dialogue on population data, just go to my playlist entitled Populations, where I share different content about population data. And I hope you enjoy this specific dialogue. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, and I hope all is well for you today. And in this population-based series, we will be discussing anything from articles to news reports, potential conspiracy theories, and assessing population data. So if that's something you're interested in, hopefully you will enjoy this dialogue. And in this episode, we will be talking about population data. In this episode, we will be looking at the population data of Indigenous peoples. Who are the Indigenous peoples? According to the UN.org, considering the diversity of Indigenous peoples, an official definition of Indigenous has not been adopted by any UN system body. Instead, the system has developed a modern understanding of this term based on the following. Self-identification. As Indigenous peoples at the individual level and accepted by the community as their member. Historical continuity with pre-colonial and/or pre-settler societies. Strong link to territories and surrounding natural resources. Distinct social, economic, or political systems. Distinct language, culture, and beliefs form non-dominant groups of society. Resolve to maintain and reproduce their ancestral environments and systems as distinctive peoples and communities. According to the UN, the most fruitful approach is to identify rather than define Indigenous peoples. This is based on the fundamental criterion of self-identification as underlined in a number of human rights documents. The term Indigenous has prevailed as a generic term for many years. In some countries, there may be preference for other terms, including tribes, First People/nations, Aboriginals, ethnic groups, etc. Occupational and geographical terms, like hunter-gatherers, nomads, peasants, hill people, etc., also exist, and for all practical purposes can be used interchangeably with Indigenous peoples. Where are the Indigenous located? According to OHCHR.org, Indigenous peoples live on all continents, from the Arctic to the Pacific via Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Many Indigenous peoples populated areas before the arrival of others. Are Indigenous peoples protected? According to Amnesty.org. Although their customs and cultures may differ, Indigenous peoples experience the same harsh realities the world over. Their human rights are routinely violated by state authorities, and they face high levels of marginalization and discrimination. Indigenous peoples face eviction from the ancestral lands they have inhabited for generations, as well as restricted access to education, healthcare, and housing. Indigenous people are more likely to live in extreme poverty and suffer higher rates of landlessness, malnutrition, and internal displacement than other groups. They often rank highest for prison inmates, illiteracy, and unemployment. According to worldbank.org, Indigenous peoples' life expectancy is up to 20 years lower than the life expectancy of non-Indigenous peoples worldwide. Are the Indigenous peoples governed by laws? According to amnesty.org, although some Indigenous peoples are self-governing, many are denied the right to freely choose their own government or political systems. This is despite the fact that Indigenous peoples were governing themselves freely for thousands of years prior to the arrival of colonizers from the 15th century onwards. According to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Indigenous peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Indigenous peoples, in exercising their right to self-determination, have the right to autonomy or self-government in matters relating to their internal and local affairs, as well as ways and means for financing their autonomous functions. According to arcticcenter.org, the Indigenous peoples view themselves as having a historical existence and identity that is separate and independent of the states now enveloping them. According to OHCHR.org, while the legal status of Indigenous peoples is distinct from that of minorities, they are often, though not always, in the minority. Languages. According to UN.org, Indigenous people speak an overwhelming majority of the world's estimated 7,000 languages. Population data. According to worldbank.org, there are approximately 476 million Indigenous peoples. They make up 6.2% of the global population. According to UN.org, there are more than 5,000 distinct groups. Well, that is all we have for today's episode, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion, where we looked at the populations of Indigenous peoples. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more.